Hello, everyone. Now, I guess I'll start this video off by basically, explaining something that I've explained in comments and on socials and across YouTube and on Twitch and my streams. I've explained this a lot, but just to reiterate, some of you guys may know me. I know a lot of people who are in the community now know me from my One Piece read-through, specifically through the streams, but a lot of people through the multi-hour videos I did for every arc. If you go to my YouTube, you'll see that every arc I had at least an hour to 2 long video of it, sometimes 2 or 3 parts, for the likes of Dressrosa or Wano, or Enies Lobby and stuff like that, dedicated to it, where I'd basically do a podcast-style recap. I'd put so much work into it. I'd read all the chapters of the One Piece arcs on stream, then I'd reread them, take notes, and then talk about each point and my thoughts about each thing and all of that, and integrated questions from the audience, or like points from the audience and my AJP stuff, and it was a whole production. Those videos were essentially my life for quite a while, and I don't really know, because of how much work went into them and how exhausting they were to record and edit, I don't really know how I kept them up while also doing streams and other videos and just living. But I did them. I did them consistently from the first arc until Wano. And then I caught up with the series when Egghead was in the middle of its conclusion, the last act or so of Egghead. And people have been asking, since then, when is there going to be an Egghead video? Is there going to be an Egghead video? And my answer's always been, nothing's planned. Basically, those videos were exhausting. And I really appreciate the support for them, and I really appreciate that people enjoyed them so much, and I enjoyed doing them, but it got to a point where continuing to do them, considering the return I got, which was, honestly, views were, not awful or anything, but they had dwindled, and the ad revenue and the Patreon income, as a direct result of the videos, the early access for the videos, they were not enough to compensate for the amount of time and work would go into them, unfortunately. And I was at risk of burnout. I was at risk of burnout for the series. One Piece has been my life for 4 and a bit years, but especially during the time where I was doing those sorts of reviews, One Piece was everything. I woke up, thought about One Piece. I didn't leave as much room for other series as I would have liked. I think I balanced it decently well, but I was feeling the effects of burnout by the time I caught up to One Piece, and so for that reason I took a step back. I stopped doing those arc reviews. I couldn't for Egghead because it wasn't done, but even when Egghead was done, I had to think, is it really worth it? And I understand and I love that people enjoyed them, but it wasn't for me. There was no justification I can make that was logical in terms of my well-being. I could have forced it out, like, what's one more, right? But I was so close to burning out, and what could have happened from that was me feeling a bit negatively about One Piece, and I never want external factors to affect the way I feel about stories. So, TLDR, I stopped doing them. However, I'm here today, okay, so let me back up. However, all this time, have been discussing these arcs, analyzing chapter by chapter, every week after week after week, hours of discussion, in addition to the more put-together podcasty videos. It's just I stopped the videos, but I've been doing all of that on Twitch. Every week that Oda writes a chapter, sometimes extra weeks where I watch the anime, or do a stream talking about a character, or rereading aspects of it. Everything's continued. One Piece has been full steam ahead on the channel since then. It's just, and in addition, I've been doing a lot more video essays for One Piece, which people were kind of crying out for as well. So, One Piece has not slowed down in the slightest. It's just those videos were not very feasible for me. Sorry for the big tangent. The point is, I continued, and I analyzed and talked about and discussed Egghead into its conclusion, and then we started Elbaf, which has now reached some sort of climax. At the time I'm recording this, I've just read 1179, one of the most exciting chapters I've read in the series. But I finished Egghead and didn't do a video And my thoughts are out there. The VODs of my read-through are on Patreon. I think they're awesome. But I figured I'd take this time to do a shorter video. Just talking about my general thoughts on Egghead, just to get it out there on YouTube, because it's not on there. This isn't going to be structured. I'm not going to go play by play, this happens and this happens and this happens, accentuated by my thoughts in a 2 to 3 hour video like I did before. But I wanted to just give an overall, I guess, scattered thoughts on what I think about Egghead. Because to me, it's one of the better arcs in the series, and I think it's really interesting to talk about. So let's get into it. Again, not gonna recap the plot. I'm coming to this. I'm assuming that you're coming into this knowing what happened, and I'm just gonna talk about general things and characters and that sort of thing. So. First thing to get across is that, as Oda has done throughout the entire series, what Oda loves doing from arc to arc is changing things up and making it variable, keeping it fresh. I think for his own sake, just keeping things fresh and accentuating his ability to create, and basically making it so that it's possible for him to not burn out as he does this week by week by week. But also for the story. Togashi does this all the time, too. To make these arcs pop and to make the story feel fresh and dynamic, you don't want every arc being the same stylistically. That's why you go from Skypiea to Long Ring Long Land to Water 7 and Ys Lobby, you know? All three of those arcs are very different from one another, but especially from one to the next. They're totally different, and that's something that One Piece has had in spades since the beginning. That is very much the case here. Wano was this beautiful, very self-contained, theme-heavy arc that is coherent and consistent and a payoff of so many things that have been building up in the series so far, while at the same time being so grand and epic and vast and self-contained to Wano in some ways that it could very much be its own manga. Like, Wano could be its own story. If you take out all the payoff, you know, if you just look at the plot of Wano, it could very much be its own story. It's so huge, it's so grand, and Wano to me very much feels very, there's Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, there's these very cohesive, consistent acts, and it reaches very natural emotional payoffs and dramatic beats that feel like a story in and of itself. It feels to me like a more modern Skypiea. In some ways, a more modern Water 7 and Ys Lobby, a little bit. It is one of those grand, epic One Piece arcs that are big payoffs, big, really theme-heavy, very emotional. And it has a very, very cohesive, consistent flow to it, and identity to it. Egghead is totally different. Egghead's extremely emotional, but Egghead is way more focused on, it's like, I describe it like a giant reverie arc. Egghead is all over the place in a really awesome way. I think it's a big stream of consciousness arc from Oda, where he's giving you this revelation, then this, and you have Garp, and then you have the Kuma flashback, and you have the Kizaru stuff, and then you have Joy Boy and Emmett, then you have this Vegapunk character study, and you have revelations all over the place, and the Straw Hats not necessarily being really in the forefront. It's a completely different stylistic approach, and I think that's very necessary to keep things fresh, and I really love that. I guess technically, if you're asking me which is more up my alley, the Skypiea Wano style or the Egghead style, I guess the former rather than the latter, but I much prefer having both, and I love both, and each is better because of the other. So just, I think that's important to note, to bring forth, is that Egghead is completely different from Wano in very important ways. Stylistically, tonally, the way it's kind of turbulent. Egghead is kind of like a roller coaster that goes up and down, very appropriate, and gives you a boom this, and boom this, and boom this, and boom this, whereas Wano is much more of on rails. It's much more on rails, the thematics, the character, it's all very cohesive, and Egghead is very intentionally discordant in ways that are meant to be jarring, meant to keep you on your toes in that way. And I really love that about it. Some might think of me describing it as turbulent as a negative. I don't mean that at all. It's just a description of its stylistics. Hopefully that makes sense. It's a bit less comprehensive. It doesn't really have a self-contained story within it, whereas Wano does, or Skypiea does, or something like Dressrosa does. Egghead has bits of self-contained narratives for sure. It has a lot of little stories within the history of what Egghead means, and within it, like there are themes, there are narratives, and I'll get to that. But it's much less of a self-contained story than some One Piece arcs tend to be. Like I said, like a longer reverie, tons of revelations, tons of lore, lots of fun, and lots of emotions all over the place. We're doing this live. Music's doing its thing. I have some notes on the side here. Just bear with me. So, in addition to that, we have, in terms of the actual subject matter, we finally meet Vegapunk. After Vegapunk was built up for so long, we finally meet the man. And I gotta say, I was really impressed with this character. I was really impressed by his characterization with, his design is batshit insane, but that aside, his dynamics, a lot of the themes associated with him, and I think if I had to sort of pinpoint one theme, or the theme that's, I think Egghead has multiple themes, multiple primary themes, 3 or 4, but the one that stuck with me the most was the duality of the human condition, and how legacy applies to that. And Vegapunk is the best example of that, because Vegapunk is someone who is incredibly complex morally to me. I think he does a lot of things that are quite bad for the world, for the people that we care about. But the thing is, he had the best of intents. It was just kind of a naivete and a narrow-mindedness and a tunnel vision about setting these things out into the world. And the duality of science and innovation kind of bit him, because a lot of what he did ended up harmful to the world. However, at the same time, he does his best to make it through his final proclamation before his death, through the other lasting things that he puts out into the world, to do more good than bad in the world. And that right there, I think Vegapunk has a lot of good in him, and he's capable of a lot of bad, and I think we're shown that throughout the arc. However, what is key about him is that he has his legacy through the satellites, and specifically, we have this dynamic between York and Lilith. One is with the Straw Hats, one is working with the opposition in the world government. And what I love about those two being set off into the world after this is that they are his defining legacies. They are both, by their very nature, characterized in ways that basically what they do are examples of what Vegapunk could have done. It's all in character for him. Even though from a certain snapshot they diverge, they're all things that he was capable of. And so everything's on board here. We have... Sorry, this music's a bit dramatic. We have a character in Lilith who is more exemplifying of the good of Vegapunk that he was capable of, that he put out into the world. And we have York, who is... not to say she's horrifically evil, but more self-serving, more dark, more conniving, and much more oppressive of a person, showcasing a lot of Vegapunk's bad. And their duel, and how that ideological duel and or thematic duel, and who ends up on top by the end, basically, is, I think, going to be a thematic example of Vegapunk's legacy. And I think that's really beautiful. And that, to me, are the themes of Egghead, or that one theme, one of the main themes in a nutshell. We talk about legacy. There's also Garp, someone who is very much characterized by complex morality, lots of good that he's done in fostering the next generation, but also lots of bad in being complicit in a lot of things that the world government have done, that even though he was playing the long game, he was complicit in, and he lent his services to. And yes, it's very complex, for sure. The stuff that he thought about on Marineford when he saw Ace about to be executed, all that, I get it. We've talked about it. It makes sense. The point is, which I don't think anyone can really argue with, is that Garp is very morally complex. He has dark shades to him, in spite of them maybe being in the cause of something greater and good, and he has good to him. He's very capable of good. And we see, with all this stuff in his little segment that we get, this explosive, epic spectacle of a segment on Hachinosu, it basically concludes with him believing in the next generation, much like Shanks, much like Whitebeard or Roger in a way, further solidifying his dynamic with the likes of Aokiji, and more than anything, just believing in Kobe, and believing that in that legacy of his, very directly similar to Vegapunk, and hoping that Kobe will carry forth what he believes in, what Garp himself believes in, how he believes in Kobe. It solidifies Kobe as one of the most important characters in the story. It gives Garp incredibly emotional stuff. Garp's one of the best characters in the series for me. And it was just generally fantastic. In addition to that, in terms of legacy, I mean, and the duality of morality of certain characters, to me, one of the underrated or, I guess, quieter stars of this was Kizaru. Kizaru's role throughout the flashback and seeing him kind of buy into Nika stuff, the dance, and seeing the more sympathetic, likable sides to him added a complexity to him that I found so unbelievably engrossing. I loved it, man. It was so good. And it really made me feel closer to him. I love Aokiji, I love Akainu, I love Kizaru. It's hard for me to pick my favorite across all three, but Kizaru might be it. I don't know, I have big stocks for all three. They're all fantastic, and I love what this did for Kizaru, and also really solidified the dualism, the duality of his character. But that is sort of a bit of a, I hate to say it, but almost an afterthought compared to the flashback, the Kuma flashback. I don't even know what to say about that. What is there to say? Everything that's been said, that could be said, has been said by so many, and by myself in streams and all around the place. It's one of the best flashbacks in the story, for sure. Kuma, and it solidifies Kuma as a great foil with Luffy. It adds such weight to his actions and his behaviors and what he did at the end of Sabaody, providing them with hope rather than despair. They just couldn't see it. And then the beginning of the post-time skip with the Sunny. It's just, and then his relationship with all the characters throughout the flashback and the dynamics throughout and how emotional it is, and of course with Bonnie more than anything. But I really take away from it how he is the fortitude and conviction and strength of spirit that Kuma has to be able to believe in Nika and pass that on to his daughter and see hope in the world and see hope in Luffy and be just the kindest, gentlest soul and such a hero, and yet every step of the way been met with unfairness and tragedy. To me, he's like a bad end for Luffy. He's an unlucky, not even because he makes any wrong decisions, not at all, but because he was just unlucky, whereas Luffy is blessed with a cosmic luck. I ramble. Kuma's flashback is one of the absolute highlights of post-time skip of the story. It's one of my favorite flashbacks, and it does so much for Kuma and so much for Bonnie, and I love that after all the tragedy, Bonnie is able to, suit up with her hero, suit up with the embodiment, the contemporary form of the sun god that she held such faith in, that she loved, that she admired, that she danced with Kuma about. It's just beautiful. It's just beautiful. It makes me really emotional. Yeah, Kuma's fantastic in this. In addition to the Vegapunk stuff, the Straw Hats take a bit more of a step back, and I think that's okay. I think that's okay generally. That's kind of been the approach post-time skip, is the Straw Hats not being quite as prominent, with some exceptions. I think it's a bit more understated, but Wano is fantastic for basically most of the Straw Hats. Whole Cake is a very time skip arc in terms of Sanji. And I think generally all the Straw Hats get really good stuff, like Dressrosa has some great Usopp stuff, and I think Wano is great. I think post-time skip is really good for the Straw Hats. However, it's clear that the approach has shifted from them being super central to them taking a bit of a step back and being more of an inspiration, more of a galvanizing force. However, we still love them. We still want them to get immense character work, and they have gotten lots of great stuff. Robin's gotten great stuff. Nami, Zoro, Usopp. I think lots of people criticize Chopper post-time skip. I think he's really understatedly good, though he does need a bit more stuff coming up, you know, where we're at in the story. But I think he's generally really good. Rook has some good stuff. Frankie's been a bit disappointing. Jinbei's a little weirder. I don't know. The point is, they take a bit of a backseat in Egghead, and I hope, in response to them being a bit more prominent in Wano, because I know that's an unpopular thought, but I do believe that. And in Elbaf, they're starting to come more into prominence, and I hope they continue to, because I kind of miss them being a bit more in prominence. But in terms of... did I say Egghead? I meant Elbaf. I don't know. But in terms of Egghead, they take a bit more of a backseat for this sort of thing to come to prominence. These other characters, this very scattershot theming, the point of view switch to Garp, the flashback. And then we also get this fantastic characterization for the Godosei, who I look to be, who in my opinion are extensions of Emu, work as inhuman monsters and extensions of Emu, but also Emu killing Saturn as well. Just devastating, really great building for Emu, really great stuff for all the Godosei and the threat, I think, that's on the horizon, that looms. Yeah, all that stuff is fantastic, and is there anything else? I have some more. I think. Oh, last thing of note is the Emmett stuff, and how it characterizes Joy Boy, and then Joy Boy's hockey, and the fear it inspired in Emu. First of all, it makes Emmett such an amazing, one of the most efficient characters in the story in terms of low screen time, but high impact. Emmett is right up there. But even ahead of him is Joy Boy for me. And their dynamic, and just the little bits we get through the tiny bits of dialogue and the panels we see, incredible, and says so much about that era of history and their relationship, and it just inspires so much theory crafting about Joy Boy. And maybe some rough edges of him, maybe some tragic elements of him, or maybe not. Either way, it just further solidified Joy Boy as this legend to me, who is one of the better characters in the story, one of the better, I guess, legacy symbol characters in the story, given so little. It's incredible. And the dynamic with Emu is so powerful. How that hockey caused Emu to shake and quiver in fear. That right there, I'm actually going to be putting together an Emu video, which will be out on the main channel pretty soon, in the next week or two. But that right there, that moment where Emu, he just shudders in fear at the legacy and remnants that haunt him from Joy Boy, that is everything. That is that fearful escapism, cowardice. That is Emu in a nutshell. So yeah, is there anything else? I probably missed some bigger stuff, some sort of broad strokes that I might have had something to say about, but again, this is just a very scattered thoughts thing. And all in all, I think Egghead's a fantastic arc, and it's to me one of my favorite in One Piece, actually. Speaking of which, I figured I'd give you guys like a little arc ranking to show where it actually is. It's in and around 5 to 7 or so, I would say. In and around the Dressrosa, Whole Cake, Sabaody tier for me, but maybe a bit more. I don't know. They all have such different strengths but I think it's in and around there. So, let me just show you right here. This is my arc ranking as of 15 chapters ago in Elbaf, but that's not really relevant for the topic right now. So let me just adjust my camera. There we go. So as you can see, the 30 arcs so far, at the bottom for me is Whiskey Peak, Long Ring, Long Land. Maybe I should update this right now. If there are any updates, maybe I should just do it right now. Whiskey Peak, Long Ring, Long Land, they're my bottom two. Long Ring, Long Land with the Robin stuff at the end definitely puts it ahead. Even maybe, and there's some cool stuff with Foxy about lore and Davy Backs and all that stuff. Still not bad scores, just I think the least impressive. 6 out of 10 is still a pretty okay score, and still positive. Then we get to the likes of Orange Town, Return to Sabaudi, which I think is elevated through the fan letter. Little Garden, which has some cool Elbaf parallels. Reverse Mountain, Laboon my goat. Punk Hazard, yeah, this feels alright. These are all good arcs, these are all decent arcs. Not among the best for me, but all contributory, all good, all very cohesive and positive. Then we get to sort of stronger arcs. Romance Dawn and Amazon Lily, both very, very impressive in all that they do. They're very functional, but they also have key emotional notes. Baratie and Syrup Village then above that, both very good arcs to me. I'm one of Syrup Village's biggest fans, and both were big hooks for me into the series for different reasons. The Zoro Mihawk fight, the Sanji establishment, and the talk with Luffy about the beauty of the All Blue and Dreams, and then Syrup Village, it's just one of the arcs that made me fall so deeply in love with Usopp, and to me, one of the strongest thematic arcs. Then we go to Logtown, Zoe, Reverie, Thriller Bark. Thriller Bark has that Bing Sake, nothing happened, Zoro's insecurities and internal anxieties and need to take everything on tax. This is where we start getting into super, super impressive stuff. Strong 8s out of 10s. Really good arcs. Here we go into, I think we start going to classic territory. Drum Island, one of the most important arcs to me. Arlong Park, probably the best for me in the East Blue arc saga. Fishman Island, whoa, in terms of thematics, emotions. Hody Jones, Jinbei, Arlong, Fisher Tiger, incredible arc. Jaya, if I were to put Jaya together with Skypia, it would be the best arc in One Piece, but I separate them because I think they're cohesive, they're comprehensive enough on their own to be separate, but as it's on its own, Jaya is still one of the best arcs in the series, 9 out of 10. And Impel Down, man, I'm such a sucker for all that Impel Down does. Such a romp, very fun, incredible new additions to the protagonistic cast just for that arc. All that it does with all these different characters, and this coming together, and what it does for Luffy's morality, and the lore, and how thrilling it is, and Buggy, and oh, it's so good. And the moral complexity of a lot of the things happening. Then we have post-war in Alabasta, incredibly emotional stuff. Alabasta's still such a classic. This is in the top 10. Then we have... Oh, whoops, I miscounted. Whoopsie daisy. Just off by 1. No big deal. Bear with me, sorry, this is live. $30 and $31. There we go. Then into my top 10. Sabaudi Archipelago, Whole Cake Island, Dressrosa, Egghead, and Elbaf. Though to be clear, this is incredibly fluid. This whole tier is absolute classics, borderline masterpieces, arcs that are my heart and soul and that I feel so strongly about, but maybe have something within them, or for any given arbitrary reason, just don't hit as hard as the 4 above them, not enough to be like a 10 out of 10, or one of the top 4 arcs in the series, or whatever, or maybe have some debilitating flaws in the sake of Dressrosa, for instance. But nonetheless are unbelievable arcs. If I were to order this now, Would I change anything? I think Dressrosa might go ahead. Maybe I drop Egghead to here? I don't, it doesn't really matter. This is pretty much a tie. Let me put Elbaf at the bottom here, because it's still in flux. It's still in flux. It's been amazing so far, but I think we're at a point in the arc where I need to see payoff before I can say, oh, it's better than Egghead. Even as it stands. It's better than Whole Cake Island, Dressrosa, Sabaody. So, I'll put it like this right now. God, I don't know. Egghead could be anywhere from 5 to 9 in the whole series. Top 10 arc for sure. Borderline masterful. Ingenious thematically, incredibly clever. You know what? Let's keep it at 5th for now. Let's just keep it there. It's in the conversation for top 5, maybe my 5th favorite. And then we have Water 7 Enies Lobby, a little bit on its own, above all those arcs. Masterful arc. Let's say strong 9 out of 10. And then the top 3, which are Skypiea, Marineford, and Wano. Let's say for individual arcs, that's how I'd probably rank them, but like I said, if we include the full, if we include Jaya with, Skypiea, then it is the best arc. If we include those two together, it's the best arc for me. I actually did an arc ranking recently. Let me just bring it up, actually. I did an arc ranking recently where, I ranked my favorite anime-manga arcs of all time, and the Skypiea saga was just ahead of the Summit War saga. I did this in November. It was 12, Summit War was 13. So, that's my favorite. But anyway, that's just my ranking of the arcs in One Piece. I guess updated, slightly updated. We have to see. Elbaf is very fluid. We have to see how it'll conclude, but man, with what's going on with Emu lately, I don't doubt that it could actually solidify itself in top 5, or maybe even go up to the next tier. We'll see. But the point is, this was my sort of scattered thoughts, covering of Egghead. I know it's nowhere near as comprehensive or cohesive or following a flow, as my other videos. I know it's not as full of details and stuff, but hopefully it's understandable why I just had to stop doing those. And like I said, if you want in-depth thoughts of Egghead, all the VODs for my read-through of it, my reactions to it, my analysis of each chapter, chapter by chapter, in excruciating detail, are on my Patreon if you want. But those are just some general thoughts. Amazing arc, love the difference in stylistics, love what it does for characters that maybe, I don't know if it needed, but definitely could have used more stuff, like Kizaru and Kuma and Bonnie and Vegapunk, just great stuff. Lucci even, Lucci as well, like, oh, love what it does for Lucci too. And just a really fantastic arc that's somehow epic and sprawling in like 70 chapters or so, like really long, while not really having a cohesive story. A self-contained story, which sounds like a bit of a disaster, like that's a bad idea, but Oda somehow makes it work. He really does. It does a bit of everything. It's like a giant reverie, which is, you know, that sounds great to me. And it just sets the stage for this final saga in a fantastic way that Elbaf has picked up the torch for, and really continued very strongly. So yeah, feel free to share your thoughts on Egghead if you'd like. If you have any questions about my takes on it, anything like that. Hopefully this is something you enjoyed, even if it wasn't a big old crazy 2-hour review for it, if it wasn't super structured. And yeah, feel free to share your thoughts. Thank you guys so much for watching, and see you in the next one.